10,000 meters down, China pulled up rock cores containing oil. Oil that should not exist at that depth. In structures that pressure should have crushed 500 million years ago. With organic traces of life from before complex animals existed. The models said none of this was possible. The drill found all of it. This is the story of Take-1, the deepest borehole ever drilled in Asia, and what it found when it went deep enough to break the rules. In the middle of the Taklimakan Desert, the most remote desert in China, a drill bit began eating through rock on May 30, 2023. It consumed more than 20 drill bits, more than 1,000 drill pipes. And it did not stop. When it finally reached 10,910 meters in February 2025, it had penetrated 13 geological formations, 500 million years of Earth history. And what came back up in those rock cores rewrote what we thought we knew about how deep the living planet goes. First, understand what 10,000 meters actually means. The deepest mine ever dug by humans is the Tautona gold mine in South Africa. 4 kilometers deep. Temperatures there reach 60 degrees Celsius. Workers need refrigerated air to breathe. Take-1 goes to 10.9 kilometers, 2.5 times deeper than the deepest mine. At that depth, the temperature exceeds 210 degrees Celsius, hot enough to vaporize cooking oil. The pressure exceeds 130 megapascals. That is the equivalent of more than a dozen elephants standing on an area the size of a fingernail. The rock itself behaves differently. The drill pipes, made of high-strength steel, become what engineers on site described as cooked noodles under these conditions. They bend. They flex. They are nearly impossible to control. Wang Chunsheng, chief expert of the Tarim oil field, said, "Workers can only rely on experience to make judgments and carry out operations. There are no instruments precise enough to handle this environment reliably. Only human judgment." At 10 kilometers down, the Tarim Basin sits between the Tian Shan Mountains to the north and the Kunlun Mountains to the south. It is one of the most geologically complex places on Earth. Its surface is the Taklimakan Desert. Its subsurface is a layered record of geological time going back hundreds of millions of years. For decades, oil companies had drilled into the Tarim Basin, stopping at 6,000 meters, 7,000, 8,000, always finding oil at those depths, always assuming deeper was impossible. The assumption was based on physics. Below 8,000 meters, temperatures and pressures were believed to be too extreme for oil and gas to exist. The hydrocarbons would break down. The reservoirs would collapse. There was no point going deeper. Take-1 was designed to test that assumption. It penetrated 13 geological formations, layers of rock representing different eras of Earth's history. Each layer a different color, a different texture, a different chemical composition. At 10,000 meters, the rock being drilled was deposited during the Cambrian period. 500 million years ago, before complex animal life had evolved on land, before the first fish had fins. The drill was eating through time itself. Then, at around 10,000 meters, the instruments registered something unexpected. Oil and gas indications. Not traces, not ambiguous signals. Significant indications of hydrocarbon presence at depths where hydrocarbons were not supposed to survive. Wang of the China National Petroleum Corporation announced, "This marks the first discovery of oil and gas beneath 10,000 meters on land globally." Globally, The first time in history. Oil found below 10,000 meters on land. The assumption that hydrocarbons cannot exist at these depths was wrong. But here is what made the discovery stranger. Cores pulled from the rock at 9,500 meters had already shown something that challenged the models. Pores, cavities, fractures, well-developed reservoir structures. In rock that old, at pressures that high. Traditional geology said those structures should not exist. At extreme depth, pressure should close every pore, crush every cavity, seal every fracture. The rock disagreed. It had maintained open pore structures through 500 million years of geological history, under pressures that should have obliterated them. And it was full of oil. A second borehole made the pattern impossible to ignore. In October 2025, the Shendi Chuanka 1 well in Sichuan province completed drilling to a depth of 10,520 meters. Different location. Different geological formation. Different company. Different team. Same result. Rock cores from 9,500 meters in the Sichuan Basin showed the same unexpected structures, pores, cavities, and fractures in ancient Sinian rock. Rock that is between 500 and 800 million years old. Rock from before the Cambrian explosion. Before complex multicellular life. The Sichuan team announced new oil and gas indications at ultra-deep depths, confirming that the deep layers of the Sichuan Basin still possess favorable storage conditions. Two separate boreholes. Two separate geological basins separated by thousands of kilometers. Two teams working independently, both finding the same thing, oil and gas. Open reservoir structures. In rock that the models said should be empty and sealed. The models were wrong in both places. At the same time. Here is why this rewrites the rules. The theory of oil and gas formation assumes a depth limit, called the oil window. Below a certain depth and temperature, oil breaks down into gas. Below a deeper threshold, even gas becomes unstable. That threshold was generally accepted to be around 7,000 to 8,000 meters under most geological conditions. Both Chinese boreholes punched through that threshold and found hydrocarbons on the other side. This does not mean the window theory is entirely wrong, but it means the window is wider than anyone believed, that under certain conditions, specific rock formations, specific pressure regimes, specific thermal histories, hydrocarbons can exist much deeper than the models predicted. The Tarim Basin has been described as having 83.2% of its deep oil resources and 63.9% of its deep natural gas buried below 6,000 meters. That was the estimate before Shendi Take 1. The estimate assumed nothing useful existed below 10,000. The estimate is now being revised. What was thought to be the floor of economically significant geology turned out to be a ceiling. Below it, something was there. The engineering of Shendi Take 1 is its own story. The drilling rig used is called the Shendi Take 1 rig. It is the world's first 12,000-meter automated drilling system, designed and built entirely in China. More than 90% of its components are domestically developed. Before this project, China relied on foreign technology for ultra-deep drilling. The country had the geological ambition, but not the tools. Shendi Take 1 was the proof of concept, not just for the geology. For the engineering, it set 5 world records. The deepest tailpipe cementing ever achieved. The deepest wireline imaging logging ever conducted. The fastest drilling beyond 10,000 meters on land. The deepest core sampling in Asia. and the world's first discovery of oil and gas below 10,000 meters on land. Each record solved a problem the engineering world had not previously solved. How do you cement a borehole at 10 kilometers? How do you image the rock walls at those pressures? How do you retrieve intact core samples from 200 degrees Celsius rock without destroying what you are trying to study? The answers exist now. They did not exist before May 2023. The rock cores are the most valuable thing to come out of the ground, not the oil. The rock. Each core is a cylinder of intact geological material from a specific depth. It preserves the structure, chemistry, mineralogy, and biological record of rock that formed hundreds of millions of years ago. The cores from Shenditake-1 were used to create Asia's first 10,000-meter geological profile, a complete record of the subsurface from the surface down to 10 kilometers. Every formation, every transition, every chemical signature. Nothing like this had ever been assembled for this region before. And what the profile showed was unexpected, not just for the oil. For the biology, organic material preserved in the rock at 9,000 and 10,000 meters. Microbial signatures, chemical traces of life from the Cambrian and Precambrian periods. Life that existed before the first fish, before the first land plant, before complex multicellular animals had colonized the ocean. Its chemical traces were there in the rock. 500 million years later. At 10 kilometers depth, under 200 degrees, and 130 megapascals. Preserved, readable, ancient. The comparison to Kola is unavoidable. The Kola super-deep borehole was drilled by the Soviet Union between 1970 and 1994. It reached 12,262 meters. The deepest point any human-made object has ever penetrated into solid continental crust. When it reached its deepest layers, it found things that contradicted the prevailing geological models. Water, free water, flowing through rock that was supposed to be too dense and too hot to contain it. The water was not surface water that had seeped down. It was created in place, squeezed out of the minerals themselves by pressure and heat. Something that had never been observed before. Hydrogen gas, bubbling up through the rock in quantities nobody had predicted. The borehole was, by some accounts, breathing. Microscopic fossils, 24 different single-celled organisms found at depths of 6,000 meters, far deeper than life was thought to survive in continental crust. Shenditake-1 found its own version of each of these. Oil, where it should not exist. Open pore structures, where pressure should have closed them. Organic chemical traces from ancient life at depths where nothing should have survived. The pattern is not a coincidence. Every time we drill deep enough, the Earth shows us something we did not expect. There is a second Chinese borehole that received less attention, also in 2025. A project in a separate region of China drilled to depth in geological formations that are described as having 29 sets of multi-pressure systems. That phrase sounds technical. It means the rock layers do not follow a single predictable pressure gradient. Instead, at different depths, the pressure conditions jump unexpectedly. High pressure, low pressure, high again. In drilling, this is the most dangerous scenario possible. Each pressure transition is a potential blowout, a sudden release of gas or fluid that can destroy a borehole and the equipment in it in seconds. The Louis Shin, general manager of the relevant drilling operation, described it directly. The difficulty and risk in well control, oil and gas drilling have reached the highest level in the world. The highest level in the world, not in China. In the world, this project was characterized as covering 7 world-class engineering problems simultaneously, 7 separate categories of difficulty that each individually represent frontier engineering challenges. All of them in the same borehole, at the same time, and they drilled it anyway. Here is what these projects mean for the next decade. The discovery of oil and gas below 10,000 meters changes the resource map of China and potentially of the world. The Tarim Basin alone, according to existing estimates before Take-1, held 83% of its deep resources below 6,000 meters. Those resources were considered theoretically interesting, but practically unreachable. Now they are not unreachable. The engineering exists. The geological profile exists. The confirmation of hydrocarbon presence exists. The Sichuan Basin adds a second major deep reservoir, with trillions of cubic meters of potential gas reserves estimated in the Precambrian rock layers, now confirmed to have viable reservoir structures. But the scientific implications go beyond energy. If oil and gas can survive at 10,000 meters under the conditions documented in these cores, then the models of subsurface chemistry used in astrobiology also need revision. The same arguments used to set limits on deep earth hydrocarbons are used to set limits on where chemistry can happen on other planets and moons. If those limits are wrong on Earth, they may be wrong elsewhere. The subsurface of Mars, the rock beneath Europa's ocean floor, the geological interior of Enceladus. All of these are being modeled with assumptions that the Chinese boreholes have now challenged. In the middle of the Taklimakan Desert, the rig is still running. Take-1 reached 10,910 meters in February 2025. Its designed target is 11,100 meters. It has not finished. Every meter deeper is a new record for Asia. Every core sample retrieved is a piece of rock that has never been seen by human eyes. Every measurement taken at that depth is data that did not exist before. The Kola super-deep borehole stopped in 1994. The Soviet Union collapsed. The funding ended. The borehole was sealed. It sits abandoned in the Russian Arctic, a welded metal cap over a hole 12 kilometers deep. China is not stopping. A third ultra-deep borehole is in planning, deeper than Take-1, in a different geological basin, looking for a different formation. The race to understand the deep Earth is not over. It is accelerating, and every time the drill goes deeper, the Earth gives back something that does not fit the models. Every time, the models keep being wrong, and the rock keeps being stranger than we assumed. The drill is still turning. Right now, in the desert, going deeper.